Hey guys, welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. If you missed it last month, I checked out Samsung's new 960 Pro 1TB SSD. Now this was a very fast enthusiast grade SSD that blew the competition away with ease. The only catch, well other than the enthusiast grade price if you will, is availability. Still, a month later, you can't actually buy the 960 Pro. And major online retailers such as Newegg are suggesting that it won't be available till January or maybe even February of 2017. So that's really disappointing. Pricing starts at $330 US or 430 Aussie. And that's for the 512GB model. And I have to say, pricing does climb quite rapidly from there. Still, the 960 Pro series is certainly worth the asking price, but these extreme performance SSDs really are overkill for most users, so it can be hard to justify spending that much. Fully aware of this, Samsung is offering a slightly cheaper alternative that still offers pretty much the same features and extreme performance. The Evo series has been updated, and now the 960 Evo is able to slay pretty much every SATA SSD on the market, as well as a good number of PCI Express SSDs as well. Like the 960 Pro series, the new 960 Evo models take advantage of the NVMe protocol, and as such utilize the PCIe interface. All models are built on the M2 2280 form factor and use Samsung's 48-layer VNAND. Samsung's latest generation SLC caching technology, branded Intelligent Turbo Write, is also being used here. They've also improved thermal controls so you can write data longer without overheating. The drives also boast a larger buffer so you can write larger chunks of data at full speed. All of these technologies and features come together very well for the 960 Pro series, so we're expecting to find much the same again. So then, what's the difference? What makes the 960 Evo series more affordable? The key difference being the type of NAND flash memory being used. The Pro series uses MLC VNAND, whereas the Evo series has been equipped with TLC VNAND. The claimed impact on performance is very minor. Sequential read speeds have been downgraded from 3.5GB per second to 3.2GB per second, while the write throughput drops from 2.1GB per second to 1.9GB per second. This kind of reduction in performance isn't something most users are going to notice. In fact, I'm willing to bet almost no one could notice the difference. The real impact of using TLC memory opposed to MLC comes down to reliability. When compared to MLC, or multi-level cell, which stores 2 bits per cell, TLC, 3-level cell, stores 3 bits per cell as the name suggests. This improves density, or capacity, but in doing so reduces performance, and most crucially, endurance. As such, the endurance rating takes a huge hit here. Whereas the 960 Pro 512GB model is good for 400TB of written data, the 500GB Evo drive is only rated for 200TB. Samsung is offering the 960 Evo series with a 3-year warranty, which means in order to reach the 200TB of written data within that period, users would have to be writing as much as 128GB of data to their SSD per day. That is an insane amount of data. Essentially, you'd be filling the entire drive every few days at that rate. In my opinion, it would be unrealistic to even suggest that the typical user would write that much data in an average week. So really, for the majority of users, it's irrelevant whether an SSD is rated for 200 or 400TB of written data, as even 200TB of writes is going to take a significantly long time to achieve for most. Obviously, more is better for reliability, but unless you're running an enterprise data warehouse or something of that nature, then you're probably okay. Moving on, the SSD 960 Evo comes in 3 capacities, the smallest of which is the 250GB model. The 250GB drive has been priced at $129 US, or roughly 170 Aussie. The 500GB model that we have costs $249 US, which works out to be about 330 Aussie. And the 1TB model, which will set you back $479 US or 565 Aussie. Samsung claims that on a typical load, the 1TB drive will consume 5.7 watts. 5.4 watts for the 500GB model and 5.3 watts for the 250GB model. Those are similar ratings to the 960 Pro series. All 3 versions of the 960 Evo measure just 80mm long, just as we saw with the 960 Pro series, and again this means they adhere to the M2 2280 form factor. The drives weigh between 8.3 and 9 grams, with the 1TB variant being the heaviest. All three models boast the same 3.2 gigabytes per second read speed, though the write performance does vary. The 250 gigabyte model, for example, has a write speed of 1.5 gigabytes per second. The 500 gigabyte model that we're looking at is rated to 1.8 gigabytes per second, and the largest 1 terabyte model is said to be good for 1.9 gigabytes per second. Finally, the 960 Evo series provides all the same data encryption features as all other Samsung SATA SSDs. Kickstarting the benchmarks, let's take a quick look at the sequential read and write performance using the AS SSD benchmark. Here we see that the 960 Evo isn't a great deal slower than the 960 Pro when sequentially reading and writing data. The Evo reached just over 2.6 gigabytes per second for the read test and 1.6 gigabytes per second for the write test, making it incredibly fast. Moving to the 4K 64 thread test, we find that yet again the 960 Evo isn't a great deal slower than the 960 Pro model. It is worth noting here that the Evo's write performance is considerably greater than that of Intel's SSD 750 series. The access time results are surprising, as the 960 Evo was slightly quicker than the Pro series here. The results are certainly within the margin of error, but it suggests that the read and write access time of the Evo series is comparable to the Pro. This also made the 960 Evo much faster than pretty much every other SSD tested. This is the type of scenario where that massive read and write bandwidth comes in very handy. Extracting a large 38GB file archive on the 960 Evo took just under a minute thanks to a rather snappy throughput of 660MB per second. This meant that the Evo wasn't a great deal slower than last year's 950 Pro, though it was 32% slower than the 960 Pro. The 960 Evo was also very snappy in our game and program copy tests. Here it only came second to the 960 Pro, while it was a good bit faster than Intel's SSD 750 series. The Evo drive sustained 856MB per second for the game copy test and 512MB per second for the program copy test. Now, let's see how all that extra bandwidth might benefit general use case scenarios. First up, we have the classic boot test. This one is pretty simple. We measured the time it took for the system to load. Starting the test as the Windows 10 logo appears, we then stopped the clock the moment the desktop loaded. This took Samsung's 960 Evo just 6 seconds, an impressive time indeed. That said, the crucial MX300 wasn't far behind, taking just 9 seconds. Meanwhile, for those wondering, a mechanical hard drive such as Western Digital's Red Pro 4TB hard drive kept us waiting quite a bit longer at 36 seconds. To measure game load times, we used Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and we measured the time it took to first load the game and then continue the single-player campaign mission. We've cut out the splash screens and any input delay from us, so all you have here is pure load times. Essentially, if there were no splash screens, this is how long it would take you to get into the game and start playing. In the case of the 960 Evo, that was just 11 seconds. Very impressive stuff again. The MX300 takes a little over twice that time at 25 seconds. Still, that is a huge improvement over the WD Red Pro hard drive, which took a little over twice as long again at 53 seconds. Priced at $250 US, or 330 Aussie, this 500GB SSD provides exceptional value given the performance. That said, for general users who just want to play games, or rather than general users, I should say gamers who want to play games, or general users who just want to surf the net, do emails, and even office type applications like Word, Excel, all that kind of stuff, then the 960 Evo really is overkill. For well under half the price, you're going to get the same sort of experience out of something like Crucial's MX300. For that reason, the 960 Evo finds itself in a bit of an awkward position. It's roughly 24% cheaper than the equivalent 960 Pro drive, and while that's a decent discount, it's probably still not enough. As I said, mainstream users will be served just as well by something like Crucial's MX300 or any other affordable SATA TLC-based SSD, and at a cost of just 20 cents per gigabyte, they are significantly cheaper. The performance you get from these new NVMe SSDs can really only be taken advantage of by professionals, or extreme users, if you will. These users aren't going to be interested in saving a little bit of money on a slightly slower model using TLC memory, or at least I don't think they would be. Basically, Samsung's hoping to entice consumers into splurging on the 960 series with the slightly more affordable Evo SSDs, which, as we have just seen, still promise big bandwidths. If you are able to take advantage of all that extra bandwidth, then the 960 Evo series really is good value. Sadly though, for most, it will be a case of spending something like 150% more per gigabyte for no noticeable performance increase over TLC-based SATA drives. And well, that's my honest opinion. What Samsung's new 960 Evo does do is make Intel's SSD 750 series and Toshiba's OCZ RD400A series completely irrelevant. For consumers seeking maximum performance, the choice is very plainly either the 960 Evo or the 960 Pro. Personally though, I think I would dig a little deeper and get the 960 Pro for that extended warranty and greater endurance rating. With that, I'm going to leave it there and let you guys take to the comments section. I'm your host Steve, see you next time.